And we are live, guys. Welcome, Ivan. Welcome, James. Welcome, everyone on the channel. It's an exciting day.
Oh yes, October. The first day of October we pumped. And now the pump continues. Good to be here.
It is fantastic. And I just said to Ivan that I moved back to my first office, my office number 1, because this is where I was on the previous bull market. So I feel the vibe coming back here that this is where markets go up. How are you, James?
Good.
Greetings from Sweden. We drink coffee here even in the evening. And we have a lot to talk about today. First, I want to address, is this even real? This Rektember and Uptober, is it real or is it just a meme? Is it just a myth? Then we'll talk about definitely real. We have bottom patterns in Bitcoin. What does it mean? We have altcoin rallies. No one has missed it. I want to pick up something that, Ivan, you talked about on your channel. Was it today or yesterday? Is it even possible? Can we get like real rallies, 10x in 2023? Is it even possible? And what are the mindsets we have to watch out here for? Because something you also said, James, just now, it's easy to fall into traps here when things turn very quickly, potentially. How to watch out, what to do. We have still drama in the macro. The DXY, the dollar strength index, the yields are still going crazy. What is happening? What does it mean? I saw an interesting tweet from Vitalik about protocol minimalism, something we have talked about here on this DCA many times, especially in comparing the different protocols. And we'll also talk about stocks. So what does that mean? What is happening with the tech stocks now? How will that influence the crypto markets? And if there's something you feel we have missed, please write it in the comments and we'll try to address it as well. So let's start from the top. Is it even real? James, do you want to start? Is this just a myth? Is it real? Or what is this actually with a seasonal variety? And if it is real, why would that even be possible? What's your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. I think one of the big things that's happening is when people look around, people are getting more educated, more wise to what's going on in the world. You know, the debt is increasing, the money printing is going to increase real soon. Governments are suffering. People are beginning, and they see what's happening in Argentina and Lebanon and Turkey and all these other places. They're becoming much more aware of kind of macro in the world, and they're looking for that safety life raft. And that can be seen if we look at the 30-day moving average of new Bitcoin addresses. Never before in the history of the world did Bitcoin add so many new addresses in a month at this stage of the cycle. The only times it happened previously were the last two tops of the bull runs. But Bitcoin added 550,000 new users in 30 days. So people are looking for that. And then combination of that too is long-term holders are not selling. Long-term holders continue to hit all-time new highs. And that's kind of where we are. And of course, there's also the narrative that, okay, Rektember is supposed to be bad. It was up 4.25%. And people are saying, uh-oh, well, if September's up, what is October going to do when the average returns in October over 30%? So you put all these little factors together and you look at the chaos in the world and you look at institutions are coming. A spot ETF will be approved in the US. Billions and billions are coming into the space. Halving is coming up. It is a no-brainer, I think, is the easy way, without sounding too bullish. But also when you zoom out and look at the Bitcoin chart as well, it's not like we haven't been here before. So year to date, like we were back here in August, June, August, at 30K. We hit 30K back in March. So it's just kind of getting to where it needs to be. I do believe there's a much higher probability. I've always said this many months ago. It's much higher probability of us hitting 30K again than 20K. And now there's a much higher probability of us hitting 30K over 25K again. We double bottomed 25K back in beginning of June. And again, September 12th, I think, or something. There was a 225K double bottom buying opportunities. And since then, it's just been strong. And not much.
Is there a seasonal variety? Is that real or is it a myth?
So humans react, I think, to seasonality and expectations like a lot of people believe that, like TA, for example, is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because people believe in the lines and they take action because of the lines, and that brings about action. But I do believe there is a lot of seasonality, especially if you look at the stock market and risk assets. We had a very strong bull market in the equity markets, but it was driven by 7 names and driven by the AI narrative. But what typically happens in the last quarter, when the first half is very strong, is the last quarter is very strong. Now, that's just history. So now everybody is kind of positioning themselves. Okay, I missed the AI narrative, and I've got a whole bunch of laggard stocks that aren't going to go anywhere. I need to pivot and reposition. So I do believe Q4 will be very strong as well for equities as we go forward.
What's your take, Ivan? Is there a seasonal variety, or is it just we're just tricking ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there is, just like TA, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where we, in crypto, we're the best at culture. We're a very culture-focused ecosystem where we like to invent different ceremonies like the halving or Uptober. Like, for example, I love how we call it Uptober. Who would have invented this word if not the crypto industry? But also, it's based on fundamentals. So, for example, we have a big cultural change happening in the world overall. Let me share my screen here for a second. Can you see my screen if you put it on in the stream, CTO? Yeah. So this Wall Street account asked, what's a scam that's so normalized that we don't even realize it's a scam anymore? And then Elon Musk just commented fiat currency. And I find this is so fascinating because, yes, it's happening during October, but it's coinciding with the fact that we're super bullish, excited now, but it's all backed by fundamentals. And the fundamentals being, for example, this cultural change. Like there is another tweet by Elon Musk about media. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's maybe not safe for work, but I mean, it is safe for work in my mind, where the media landscape is changing as well. Whatever you see on media is now very questionable. And now instead people want to go to social media and find other ways to get information. So is it seasonal? I mean, I'm sure there is a big factor to that, but also it is fundamentals. And this thing that people understand that the US dollar is not invincible. In fact, we may have a debt spiral where interest rates go up, but what happens? Then deficit goes up as well, because now the interest rate is way higher on government debt. Which means higher inflation because the governments don't stop spending, even though the interest is higher. You and I stop spending, the governments never stop spending. So it's all coming together, but for sure there is a seasonality here.
Yeah, there's one thing, just to double click into what Ivan just shared. And I was, somebody was in the conversation. I posted something, and sometimes you post things and it upsets people because they have blind faith in certain people that speak. I'm not going to mention any names or anything else like that. But we have been, as a people of the planet, been gaslit by so-called leaders and authorities and governments for many, many different perspectives. They say things like, oh, inflation is fixed, and this is good for you, and do this, and this is mandated, and lockdown, etc. Again, I don't want to be political here, but the big pivot in the world right now, I think Elon Musk is becoming the biggest threat to governments and authoritarian governments because it's a new source of narrative. And for governments to stay in control, they need to control the narrative. Now they're really afraid because they're losing touch of that. And that is why people come out and speak against Elon. That's why Elon's very unpopular. So when you have 550 million people coming onto Twitter daily, or whatever the numbers are right now, a new all-time high, and they're not reading traditional newspapers and not watching cable TV and not being fed the narrative, and they're finding their own narrative, that is disrupting the world order. And that's making many leaders very nervous right now. So I think that also, it dovetails directly into why we Bitcoin too, because it is the biggest scam is fiat. We know like money printing is going to happen at an accelerated pace going forward. Every single indicator points to that. Now people are beginning to look at charts and see it. They see the S-curve of money printing and the S-curve of debt. And they know now, anybody, even if they don't understand charts or macro or numbers, they can see it's not good. And that's why things like Bitcoin are becoming very popular. It is built exactly for this purpose. And now the world is slowly waking up. Hence, that 550,000 new users. Let me make sure I got those numbers right in crypto. Yeah, 550,000 new Bitcoin users just in the last a day. a day over the last 30 days. Okay, so 550,000 new Bitcoin users a day over the last 30 days in the month of September shows you what's going on in the world today. People are looking for
But
truth.
should we be worried for Elon? Because, like you say, he's becoming very powerful. He is putting his something on media's face, like we saw in the picture, and now people come to Twitter for a narrative. And there's this whole conspiracy about Hillary and this and that. Without going into specifics, like, should we be worried or not? You think?
I tweeted that actually a couple of times over the last couple of months, that my biggest fear is something will happen to him. He'll be taken out by government because he's too dangerous. He'll be RFK'd or whatever. I've said that many times before. That's my biggest concern right now. And you see that everybody, the majority of the planet dislikes him, especially those in authority, because he cannot be controlled. He cannot be tamed, and it's very, very serious.
Yeah,
I thought also I thought about exactly what you said now, James, this morning. He's the only person in power that is standing up and actually matters, like this thing with Canada today, that they want to register streaming platforms for different purposes, and he's the only person that might stand up and be strong enough to challenge things like that. Everyone else does, okay, yeah, that's fine, that sounds reasonable. Terrorism, finance, prevent terrorism, and stuff like that. There's always good reasons. And he also tweeted this thing with Lilliput that we talked about last year, that you get each thing individually makes sense, kind of, but when you put it all together, you get a completely different society that's very different from the quite free society that we've all grown up in.
And let's join the dots between Canada and Bitcoin. What happened not too long ago? You guys remember?
Yeah,
truckers.
Yes, truckers.
Yeah,
they wanted to protest against something, which you won't talk about either, and they were funded by donations by Bitcoin, which was then in turn confiscated by the government. So it's just it's 1984 is rolling out before our very eyes right now, and again,
exactly.
it all feeds back to why we Bitcoin.
And coming back to this seasonality, you showed a very interesting Excel, James. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, where you see the performance per month through Bitcoin's history. I don't know if you have it handy. You can maybe pull it up, but it really shows this seasonality. And I think it's not new. I mean, my dad, when I was a child, 40 years ago, he talked about this. You buy at the new potato, which is in June, and you sell at the crayfish. That was kind of in Sweden, that was the well-established principle, because the thinking was that during July tends to go up in Sweden. There's no bad news presented in July, so most of the stocks tend to go up. And I think at the time it kind of worked. So there's been this idea of seasonality isn't new, and I mean, it's a fact that it has been a cycle in the history of Bitcoin so far.
Yeah, I'll pull up that chart in a second. I'm just uploading it right now to my camera.
So yeah, and while you're doing that, would you like me to wait for it, or should we pass?
Yeah, it's coming up right now, and I can just overlay the chart with my face. Hold on a second. Yeah, here it is. Hold on. Juggling. Boom. This one. So if you double click on me, this is the performance average monthly returns mapped out since the beginning of time for Bitcoin. And you can see that September is historically by far the worst month, and on average very, very bad. But October is the third best month. November is the best month. So either way, whichever way you skin it, the next 12 weeks will be really, really good. Unless, of course, something really bad happens in the market. But even saying that, if something bad does happen in the market, you know what? Bitcoin likes a crisis, as I always say too. So if there is a black swan event, people will also go to the safety life raft of Bitcoin, and it could even pump harder. So it's, again, since I started the channel, I always say all roads lead to Bitcoin. And that's exactly what's happening right now. It's just happening a little bit faster than I expected. The pace of which things are devolving, let's say, is really, really rapid, which is scary.
Yeah, I don't think even us here, I don't think many of us expected that there would be this kind of debt crisis and things going haywire in the US already now. It seemed like something that could happen in the far distant future, but here we are. So let's move on. Bitcoin bottom pattern, because there is actually something rather interesting that is definitely a fact, and that is that we saw it end of last week. We talked about it, I think, last stream here on the DCA, that we're getting a inverse head and shoulder that confirmed in Bitcoin, and that's a strong high confidence pattern. These patterns don't always work. It's about probability, that it increases the probability that we're going up. And because sometimes these patterns happen when some big player is buying and they're trying to buy in a way that doesn't really show. But so first they buy a little bit here, and then they stop buying, price goes down, they're buying a little bit more, price goes back up, but they stop buying here at the neckline, and then price goes down. But this time it doesn't go down as far as it did last time, because now everyone is stressed and they don't want to wait anymore, so they start buying more earlier, and price goes up to that neckline again, and it breaks out. That is then the psychology behind this inverse head and shoulder, and the same thing on the top pattern. So that means that there might be big players buying. I saw someone asked in the chat, why would someone be bullish here? Well, one reason could be that a lot of people were bearish. So there was a lot of people shorting here, and that means that some big player could take the opposite position, try to liquidate all those people and run it back up. But what does this mean? I mean, from a TA perspective, this inverse head and shoulders pattern gives a target approximately at 30K. So that means that if this pattern plays out, that could take price up to 30K. But then I think what really matters is what happens then. Will we break out here, or is this another touch on 30K and we keep staying in this range? And I don't know that, and I guess no one really knows for sure. But what are your thoughts? Where are we in the market? Is this really the first signs that the real bull market is starting, or are we just keep bouncing around here in the range? What do you think? Any takers?
Again, per the chart I just showed, the next 12 weeks will be extremely bullish. And then after that, the pre-halving run should be very bullish as people get into positions. Those that are late, there's still a lot of bears on the sideline that are waiting for their 10K, 11K Bitcoin, 12K Bitcoin. And they're beginning to realize that may never happen. And they've got positions to fill. And that's not even talking about the institutions that are coming too. So a lot of tailwinds are behind us now. My target for the halving was always between 35K and 42K. And if you look at this chart here, 35K might actually be very conservative because it's not far away. We can hit 35K in a short window of time. Even if you just look at the Bitcoin action just over the last 2 days, it's staggering, big candles happening, daily candles. And it's only, the 2nd of October. So this thing can move very fast. And that is the scary thing out there. And also what's interesting, if you look at the amount of short positions on Bitcoin, there's very few people that are short. But there's a lot of people that are long. I was looking at the options positions yesterday, and there are a ton of new bets were made over the last 24 to 48 hours for the $45,000 Bitcoin by Christmas. So that's why my 42K target for the halving now looks really conservative when you look at what the big options traders are betting on. So actually pull up your chart there, CTO, and forecast out where 45K is and how far away it is in percentage terms and how quickly that could be achieved by the halving. I think that would be an interesting exercise for the audience.
Absolutely. If we go from here, for example, and 40K, it's only up here. Now the 42%. The thing is that if we look here, let me close this one, make it a little bit clearer and make this bigger. So when we fell from 40K down to 30K, which was over here, that was all in one go. So that makes kind of a wall here.
Yeah.
And that also means that since this timer, since late 2021 and 2022, there hasn't been much volume between 30K and 40K. You can see it here on the right side. It's completely open because we fell immediately from here down here. So that means that there's perhaps not much resistance if we actually break out from 30K up to 40K. That could be another, couple of candles in the other direction, just like we had here.
It's an air gap. And also
it's an air gap there, exactly. I mean, there is volume if we look back in previous years, but perhaps those trades are already closed by now. So if you look at the recent timing, there isn't much volume. So that could easily happen. If we break up here, trend is going to be up again, probably. If we break up 30K, we will have a major resistance breakout in an uptrend in an asset that I think a lot of people are interested in, and FOMO could really set in there, and it won't take much to snap up to 40K there. Definitely. But it hasn't really happened yet. We still need to break through this resistance. That's what I'm looking at. But it is definitely very exciting. I was very excited here actually about this inverse head and shoulder. It made me a lot more positive last Thursday, Friday. And I think that's really, a lot of people probably saw that. And that's probably been precursor for a lot of the altcoin rallies. So let's move on and look at altcoin rallies, because what happened also past couple of days was that we got major rallies in a lot of coins with even prettier charts. For example, I took this trade here. This is Solana to USD. Here we had another inverse head and shoulder, textbook, perfectly clean, broke out, and actually reached the target immediately. In 2 days. In 2 days, it reached the target. And these are not small moves. From neckline
30% in 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. And from the bottom even more. And these are big moves in a couple of days. And we haven't really, and if going through the charts, there's a lot of these setups. Suddenly this weekend, we got presented with a lot of these altcoin setups that are definitely real. And a lot of the coins that have kind of had challenging time for a long time, suddenly they start pumping like this. So I'm very excited. I felt that it's time to wake up here, because suddenly these things have started happening that we haven't seen in a rather long time. And it's almost the same in every coin that we have looked at that we are kind of interested in. So it's very, very interesting. So what is happening here, guys? What's your reading of the market? Has something fundamentally changed? Are altcoins back? Ivan, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. If you switch back to the Bitcoin chart, I have one more thing to say about the Bitcoin bottom. And that's that I love how if you zoom out a bit and look at when we reached the bottom at 15K and what we've done since then, we've never had a massive parabolic run like last cycle. Because you remember last cycle, we just exploded from the bottom all the way to 14K. It was so violent. There was no pullback or anything. And that resulted in us going sideways for quite some time, basically a year. We also had that mega dip there to 3K in the COVID times. And now it's very different, because now the pump from the bottom has been quite gradual. We pumped there from 15K to a higher high, and then we dumped a bit and then pumped again. And now we've been even sideways for a while. So this to me looks fantastic, because it hasn't been, a knee-jerk reaction from the bottom. The market has really confirmed all of these levels. The market has had a lot of chances to say that, we're dumping or we're not dumping. And the market has said that 28K is fair, 26K is fair. And everyone has a lot of time to either dump or buy more. And it's a very nice, calm chart. And that's why, personally, I also think that this bearish trend that you have right now in the Larson line will probably be one of these bearish ones, which is just temporary. When we have a sideways market and when we don't really have any big move to either side, sometimes these trend indicators like the Larson line, they do enter the bearish trend, but it's only for a short while. So I think that that one will flip bullish within the coming weeks. The one that you're looking at the very right, like the current bearish trend that we're in. In terms of alts, yeah.
Let me just close that Bitcoin. Then we open the altcoin chart. Yeah, absolutely, like you said. So during most periods of Bitcoin's life, it's been in trending price action. It's like huge mega trends like this. And then huge trend in the other direction. And then huge trend up. And then we had a little bit of consolidation here during 2020, 2021, the COVID dip and so on. But then it was back on again. Huge trending price action. And then actually we've been in a little bit consolidation. Even though this is big, this is still a consolidation pattern. This is a range. And then we fell out of the range and we had trending price action on the way down. Then, as we talked about here on this channel, we found the bottom. We had trending price action up again. But then this is a range again. Sorry, I'm drawing like... So this is a range. And then we're not trending. There is no trending insights to gain in a range. It's the opposite. We might the trend might look down at the bottom of the range, and then it looks up at the top of the range, and then it looks down at the bottom of the range, and so on. So this isn't an area to look for trends. There is no trend here. It's a range. What we're looking for is a breakout of the range with a trend in the right direction, so to say. So if we break out here, and the trend is up, okay, that's actionable. If we break down here with a trend down, okay, that's actionable. But bouncing around here, we shouldn't look at any trends. There is no trend. This is just a range. So that is definitely how to read it. I agree 100%. That this doesn't
and that's an important clarification. That's an important clarification to anyone using the trend indicators, because when it's sideways, the trend may be down, but you need to look at the context, which is a range right now. But let's switch the gears to alts. I mean, as you know, personally, I love alts. That's the main reason why I'm trading, because Bitcoin is Bitcoin. We know it's going to be big, but alts, that's where you can really change your life. And that's what I'm mostly excited about. So seeing Solana, seeing also ETH do quite well and climb back to, 1800 or so, is fantastic. Also seeing Thorchain do well. We see Rollbit as well. Surprisingly, BSV as well, plus 20. I mean, the biggest gainer I see today on crypto bubbles is BSV, although they have an internal fight there with the CEO leaving Enchain and stuff like that, going after Craig. But surprisingly, it's also doing quite well, like straight up, yeah. But yeah, you see the longer trend. it's to the toilet.
Rough for them.
Yeah, there's still. By the way, could you address that, Ivan? There is still so much confusion out there. I get the same question every day from people. It's like, I'm going to buy BCH or BSV because it's cheaper. They believe it is a proxy for Bitcoin. Could you help people understand what it is? They don't listen to me.
Well, we've had this for many years. Yeah, I mean, we've had this copies for many years, and some of them do capture a lot of followers. So when Bitcoin split off into Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash in 2017, many people went into the Bitcoin Cash world, and they said that that's the real Bitcoin because they increased the block space, and now we can scale Bitcoin more. So there was a lot of excitement for Bitcoin Cash. But the problem within Bitcoin Cash was that a small group of people within the Bitcoin Cash community, they wanted their own coin. So they created the BSV, which is like the real Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash was the real Bitcoin, so to speak. And now BSV is like the real Bitcoin. But all of that falls apart. But I gotta say, like, the cults that they created have been super powerful. Like, people were like fully fanatic about these coins for a while. Now, though, they have disappeared. weird. So I don't feel that they are a big player in the market now, this all of the different copies. But it was crazy in 2017, 18, 19. Some people really became cultish, and they were very aggressive towards anyone who said that Bitcoin Cash or Bcash, even call it Bcash was forbidden, or BSV is a garbage. And I know that CTO Larson has a friend who is who is in that cult. I don't know if he is anymore, but it's crazy. But right now it's a very small player in the market, all of these different copies. And frankly, I haven't seen a lot of people be interested in them. I think the conclusion that the market has is that Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and after all of the attempts, you cannot copy it. And there is only one Bitcoin, and that's BTC. But what do you think, CTO? I know you have some insight. I mean, you yourself, you were also looking into it from a technological perspective, right?
Yeah, I felt that that's the weird thing. I felt that from a technical perspective, they had a point that a more scalable layer 1 Bitcoin that is cheaper to use and that can maybe also store some data. I felt that, yeah, that sounds better than one that stops working, because if you recall, that actually happened during 2017, right? Suddenly there were 3 days waiting time. If you want to send a Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet or withdraw from an exchange, it took 3 days before it arrived. And it felt like this whole thing is malfunctioning, and we haven't even, gotten adoption yet. So I felt that from a technical perspective, they kind of had a point. But it just shows that it's not only about technology, it's a lot about many other things. And there were I think all the main people in both those camps, they were all extremely polarizing and, not so cooperation oriented, if putting it mildly. So this kind of, if we're looking at the chart, it has been a very, this is the BCH. I just put it up here. So this
and by the way, one thing about the tech.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I was also checking a lot. Yeah, it's down only. It's down only in Bitcoin terms. But I agree on the tech perspective. I'm also very curious about the tech arguments. I was watching Rick Falkvinge, which is like a pirate party founder here in Sweden. And 10 years ago, the pirate party, they had a bit of some tailwind here. But he is actually in the Bcash, Bitcoin Cash camp. And he did a lot of videos why Lightning would fail. And by the way, he was correct, because Lightning is not getting too much traction, like real Lightning. Centralized Lightning hubs, they do get some kind of traction, but real Lightning doesn't. So there are some tech arguments that definitely make sense. And on the technological front, I would wish that even the Bitcoin maxis, like BTC maxis, would be more open-minded. But yeah, it's more on the community level that Bitcoin is a community, tech is open source, you can take the tech anytime. But on the corporation and building a community and driving it, that has been very hard for them, and it's seen in this Bitcoin price chart.
Oh, definitely. So they haven't really gotten any traction. So, I mean, I felt for me, because I worked with in corporate and a lot of tech innovators, they are not the most socially intelligent people, if I put it mildly. So those kind of things, it doesn't affect me. It's like water on a goose. It doesn't stick. But I can see that it does stick on most people. It's all they focus on, that they don't like the person, so then they cannot be part of that community. And I think that's really the difference here between a company like a stock and crypto. That's really been one of my big insights, that it is about community building. If you own all the stocks in the company is still worth something. But if you own all the coins in a crypto project, it's worth nothing. So you can't be in that situation. You have to kind of distribute it out, and you have to get ecosystem growing and all those things. That's where the value is created in crypto, as opposed to in a company.
Yeah, but to get back to the point of in alts, because that's where we start. Like, are alts really back? And at the end of the day, like, it's impossible for us to say here whether this is the start of an alt season. But you don't need a lot for alt season to start. The meme season was created out of nowhere. Basically, Bitcoin had a bit of an uptrend from 20k to 30, and then some coins launched. People started buying. Whales started buying, and this took us like through a few weeks to create, and it lasted for 1-2 months. So can alts get back? Absolutely. It's a very volatile, very, how do you say, like it can light up at any moment, like a tinderbox. It's a very flammable market. And we have the early signs of it. Let's see how it evolves.
Exactly. And I think something that we have talked about here several times, but it's important to remind that when it happens ultra fast. Like when the times we've had like a real alt season where altcoins have made this 100x runs, it's like crazy fast. It seems impossible that it can happen, but then suddenly it happens. But it happens so fast, boom, boom, and it's if it starts happening, if this altcoin versus Bitcoin versus altcoins, maybe even clearer if you look at only the speculative ones. If it starts happening, it could start looking like this. It can be like in a couple of weeks, altcoins make so big moves that it seems impossible. And the reason is that market cap that we're measuring this in, or price, it doesn't mean that the same amount of money need to flow, because you can sell a little bit of Bitcoin, nothing happens to the price. But then if you take that money, those $100 or $100 million, and you go into some altcoin and buy everything that is for sale, price goes up 100 times because there's so little liquidity. And that's why these kind of crazy runs can happen, putting it in a simplified way. And that can happen really fast. So I also wanted us to talk a little about mindset.
Before we go to alts, I do have one little chart to show as well, which is kind of super interesting. Now, whichever way you look at alts, like over the last 30 days or 90 days or whatever, this is weird because normally the new stuff kind of runs fast, but we're seeing a new phenomenon. There's so many things that are different this time around. It's kind of staggering. But over the last 30 days or 90 days, you see things like Solana outperforming Bitcoin, Tron outperforming Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash outperforming Bitcoin, Chainlink outperforming Bitcoin, Maker, Cosmos. Like, these are names from the past, including Solana, the hero of last season, whereas all the other things, like not only the new stuff, but some of the old stuff too, has really, really underperformed, including Ethereum, down 4%, for example, over the last 30 days. So I think this time is a little bit different from that perspective. So interested in what you guys think, if you've been tracking that. Like, the breed of winners is extremely different, and it's good to see some of the old ones from the past coming up again. So what do you guys say to that? Like, everybody thought like optimism and SUI and all these things would make it, but they can't because the economics are so bad.
I have one thing. Let's see. Do you see it? I don't know if the sound. I don't know if the sound works. Does the sound work? Did you hear that for a second?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Warning. Hackers are showing crypto.
Anyway, guys, you can watch the whole thing, but this is just in sound, like explaining why why Tron is the best, because it's defending crypto frontier with unwavering determination. Tron remains steadfast in safeguarding the crypto, in safeguarding the future of digital assets. Hashtag TRX. There you go. That's probably why Tron is doing so well.
Well, I always say, I look at two things. Well, two things mainly is where the money is going and where the adoption is happening. And Tron has had crazy adoption all through the bear. Part of it is because of Asian gamblers and stuff like that. A lot of dApps are built.
It's the biggest chain for stablecoins.
Yeah. And it is really, really impressive how it's done during this bear.
They've had a fantastic 2023 throughout also. Yeah. Absolutely.
But to your question, James, that's normally what happens, right? That in the early stages you have the big coins, and then the capital flows into smaller coins, with some exceptions. Like the meme season was the exception, where we went degen into this small caps. Maybe it's because this was just the way the run was started, that a few whales maybe came together, started to pump a few coins, and that's like where the pump was contained within that sector. And now maybe it's more market spread, that it's going from Bitcoin to bigger alts, like CTO said. But normally this is how it happens, that Bitcoin pumps, then the bigger alts, and then smaller.
Well, I remember like five years ago, I think it was, everything was dying except for Chainlink was pumping. So Chainlink performed really well during the bear. This time it's early bull and Chainlink is pumping. So it's, just one example of how things are actually different this year. But we'll see. And what typically happens is these things will exhaust themselves, and then the money will flow into what people think have not run yet, where they can make their 10x or whatever. So anyway, I think that leads us into the next agenda item.
Exactly. So if we're turning around here, there is a mindset problem also. What happens here is very difficult. It's very difficult to turn around. What tricks do you have, or how do you manage this situation to not get paralyzed? Because a lot of people, I think, are paralyzed at this stage of the market. First, there was price capitulation. Then there's like time capitulation where nothing happens, which is even harder. Then if we actually start moving, a lot of people will not pull the trigger. They will sit and wait until most of the run is over, and then they will buy the top. What mechanisms do you use to kind of not fall in that trap?
I think probably the most important thing is to, be on the lookout for bottoms and bottom signals. And when you see that bottom, you throw the kitchen sink at it. And, fear can prevent people from taking action, like you correctly said. And that's caught a lot of people out because they listen to FinTwit or whatever. And that can be a big problem. You will always be able to find somebody or some narrative that supports your fear or your position. And that's why I always say as well, blaze your own trail, look at the data, be data driven, and let that determine exactly how you deploy. But if you snooze, you lose, as the old expression goes. Ivan?
Yeah, I like what you said about that. There's always something bearish, and there's always something bullish. And I normally say on my channel that we need to be bearish in a bear market and bullish in a bull market, and that's the most important thing, to have an understanding, or at least some kind of thesis. Are we right now mostly bullish or mostly bearish? Are we in a bull or a bear market? Because everything else becomes easier, and there will always be someone who is making a bearish YouTube video. We are normally on the bullish side, at least now, when we have had the bottom and we're trending up in the Bitcoin price. Some people will always be bearish. So if you don't have your own opinion, your own view of the market, you will be always swayed, concerned, and then you're bullish, and tomorrow you're concerned because someone else published a video. So that's the most important thing, to have your own understanding and your own thesis. And then, as always, it's always hard to know exactly when things will happen. That's why you can DCA. You buy something, it dumps, okay, now you can buy it cheaper. So it's good for you. Yeah. Or it goes up, okay, now you've made some money, you can buy more. It's also good for you. So whatever happens, it needs to be good for you. And you can achieve that with risk management, DCAing, all of the basic stuff. And the thing is, you need to be involved. That's my message. Be involved, because if you're fully on the sidelines, you have zero in crypto right now, and then we start mooning, it doesn't feel good for you, because then you feel that you lost the train, and then you're on the sidelines for the rest of the bull market. If we start dumping, you will also not take action, because you will think, I was right, it's dumping now, and you will then forget about crypto and only wake up when it's too late. Instead, if you buy a bit, if we dump, at least you know it. At least you can follow along, and now we have established the bottom, and you will feel. I mean, you will feel that, okay, now it's going up. Yeah, you have a presence in the market. You start feeling the market. You're not fully without a compass. You start building your own internal intuition and compass about what's happening. So yeah, that's the key. Be involved and risk manage. So whatever happens, it's good for you.
Okay, let's move on to the macro, because there is still drama in the macro. We have in this DXY, the dollar strength index has definitely broken out. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Definitely broken out. The yields keep going crazy. We're we fell back a little bit in the range. Now we're making another breakout attempt. The 10-year yield is making new highs. And this drama continues with moves that are generally not so good for speculative assets. Usually it's not good with stronger dollar and stronger dollar and increasing dollar yields. Yet at the same time, Bitcoin is going up. So what is happening? What's actually going on? What's your take, James? You're our macro super specialist.
Well, I hate to use the words again, but everything is different this time. You look at employment numbers, which are kind of cooked and contrived. They're not exactly real, but they say, record low. GDP numbers are kind of contrived. CPI numbers are contrived. Everything is kind of lagging and erroneous. And that's the big problem. But big picture, again, we spoke about Dixie before. When you look at the dollar index, it's a bag of dirty shirts, and the dollar is the least dirty one. So as an indicator, I think it was last week or the week before, you and I discussed this, and I said, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's like measuring a crappy car company against another crappy car company. They're both crap, and they're both not going to make it. Now, when you look at interest rates, there's been a lot of talk last week. I think it was Jamie Dimon saying interest rates could nuke to 7%. That's very possible, because if you look at like the 10-year treasury and you look at the amount of money printing that's going to come over the next 10 years, who is going to buy that unless they're getting paid a substantial amount of money, because these assets are just going to debase over time. So the government will be under exceeding pressure to increase. They got to juice the return on those assets, which means rates have to go up unless they inform some type of yield curve control. I mean, everything is broken. And I did a whole video, I think last week, on debt, and we got a problem. And literally, globally, debt is just spiraling out of control again at a pace that is far faster than I ever imagined. I knew it was going to happen like 2028 or something, but it's all happening so fast. And it's as if the governments and central banks around the world are incinerating things. It's like, let's just rip off the Band-Aid really quickly and torch this thing to the ground, because that's what's happening. And then you've got trad markets that have huge bond exposures. We're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. They're being smashed as the interest rates continue to go up. Their bond portfolio tanks. People thought, 2022 was going to be a terrible year for bonds and the worst year ever. Well, 2023 is just as bad. So everything is kind of different. And I think now people need recession-proof assets, hard assets, and we're seeing that escape to these assets right now. Therefore, things like Dixie and Bitcoin are becoming correlated. Hope that makes sense.
Very interesting. Looking at the markets, the CME market, nothing has really changed. They think there will be no change to the Fed target rate until mid next year, and then reduction starting from there. Just as an observation. Ivan, what's your thinking here with this?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the perfect tweet for this that I saw, where higher yields, so higher interest rate will lead to higher inflation because the debt is spiraling out, like James said, and the government spending is not decreasing. Like, the whole idea with higher interest rates is to cool down the economy, so you get wrecked by your mortgage, so you don't go and buy out plasma television and other unnecessary stuff, and that your business it runs out of business, so you don't even have a job. So we cool down the economy. That's the whole point of increasing the interest rate. But there's one person who will never cool down, and that's the government. They're not decreasing, so their debt goes up, but now the interest rate also has 5x. So what the hell? Like, well, what is the end game? There is the death spiral that we're witnessing, where they have a deficit, they need more debt, which is more expensive, and their previous debt is now rolling over into more expensive debt. So I don't know, guys. That's why this Dixie chart, it should be also including Bitcoin, or some maybe gold or something, because it is. I mean, what is the meaning of this chart? It's comparing dollar to other currencies, but why should that matter for a hard asset like ours? So
it doesn't. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So personally, I'm not looking at it too much, but I know the market does. But CTO, can you put the stock chart on top of that? Because I think last week we said that it's not always correlating. Like, if you zoom out, sometimes it's correlating, sometimes not really. So personally, I don't look too much at it, but
It was particularly the yield, right? Also that.
Oh yeah, it was the yield. Sorry, yeah, it was the yield. It was the yield. It was the DCA. Sorry, yeah, the yield.
So exactly, so we don't really know, and I
yeah.
think also it's a reminder to chart each thing by itself, right? There is a slight danger of saying that okay, this thing is happening to this asset, so then this should happen. Well, it might not, because as James said, there might be some explanation that's happening on this side that actually doesn't translate over in the same way to this side. So.
But you know what would be scary? The scary scenario is in case yields continue to go up, but Dixie is dumping. I mean, that would mean basically that they're trying to give higher interest rate. The government wants to raise money, try to give higher interest rate, but people don't want it. Like, people don't want the dollar. There is no trust. So, but the problem, it will never happen because it's compared to other currencies and they're even worse. But if you compare to Bitcoin, that will happen, where the dollar yields will go up like hell, but dollar in Bitcoin terms will fall. And it's kind of, what's interesting is if you compare the bond yields in the US to ETH yield, it is higher. Like, you can get higher yield by lending to the US government today than you can get if you stake ETH. And guess what? People are not unstaking, because if they would unstake, the yield would go up. So it's market yield. It's not a fixed yield. It's market yield. So that one is very interesting. The ETH stakers, they don't want to lend to the government. They would rather stake and get lower yield on ETH because ETH is better for the long term. They want ETH.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could pop up that tweet I just put in the chat. It's a very interesting little chart that I put together regarding a car company. And it's kind of what we're talking about. If you take the stock price going back to the 1970s and you divide it by the growth in M2 money supply, you'll see the exact performance of the stock over 50 years. And that's how everything kind of needs to be measured. Forget Dixie, forget yields, all that type of stuff. But if you look at money supply growth, you'll see how it pops.
I'm sorry, James. I don't see the. Is it a comment in the YouTube?
In the private chat on the right.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just a simple little chart that shows you exactly how much debasement takes out of your pocket.
Hang on. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. To stage.
CTO having technical issues, but that chart there, 99.53% loss on your investment if you held forward stock for the last 50 years. And that is staggering when you think about it. But you divide everything by M2 money supply growth, you're shrinking. So I actually know people that have, they got it from their parents and they just held it because it's safe and it's secure. Some things can do really well, like Home Depot, which is like a hardware store in the United States, but other things simply do not do well. And that's just a very good perspective of what we're talking about. So literally, ladies and gentlemen, divide everything by M2 money supply growth. That is only going to accelerate from here on in as everything implodes. And therefore, you need hard assets. And even if you think a stock is going up, as I say, if you're not making 14% per year, you're going backwards. You're not treading water in a pool, you're drowning. And that's very important too. So,
yeah, things are changing, definitely. That is for sure. I'm sure that many of these car companies, they did not take Tesla seriously a couple of years ago, for example. And here they are. So things are changing. It seems impossible until it happens. That's for sure. Then we have another thing to cover here, protocol minimalism, because if I switch back to this one, Vitalik put out, I think, an interesting article here 2 days ago. Should Ethereum be okay with enshrining more things into the protocol? And then there's a long article here, which we will not read right now on the live stream. But the point of it is basically this complexity, that it can help, for example, to avoid centralization risks if we build stuff into the protocol instead of someone builds it on top as a company. But if we enshrine too much, we can overextend the governance load of the protocol. We can overcomplicate the protocol. And it can backfire in the long term because as protocol developers, they think that some certain feature or need is very important, so they build it into the protocol, making it more complex. But then turns out that's not what people wanted to do with the protocol. They wanted to do something completely different, and they've built that thing in, and it's there forever. Very difficult to take it out. And I really appreciated this long, thoughtful conversation around that topic, and it touches on something. We all joke here that James is Solana support team because while actually I think it's like you have like a few percent of your portfolio in Solana, so it's just a joke for everyone here. So we're not misunderstanding, but we've had this discussion of going a more complex route, building layer 2s and so on Ethereum, while Solana has taken a more high performance but simpler approach, staying more on layer 1 and just have high performance, so you can basically run anything you want. And I can see that Ethereum, like maybe the leading brain still in Ethereum community, Vitalik, is kind of having these thoughts as well. What's your thinking here, Ivan? You start with the technical side.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I see
it. That's my point.
I mean, actually, my conclusion is vice versa to what you just said, where ETH is super simple. It is what it is, and then it's up to the devs to extend it. If you want, let's say, a L2 with these parameters, it's up to you. ETH is just what it is. It's super simple. So actually, I mean, my understanding here is that he is arguing why ETH is simple on the protocol level and changes very slowly, and it changes faster than Bitcoin, but it is basically what it is for the most part. And then it's up to us to scale it, extend it, add features, and so on and so forth. And it's more of an argument for the L2s and things that are user built, you can say, but it's built by other devs. But from a protocol perspective, they are users of ETH. All the L2s, they're users of ETH, and they are extending it according to their own needs.
Yeah, from my perspective, I always think simpler is better. And it's because I think Albert Einstein said everything should be as simple as it can be, but not simpler. And it goes back to, I think, what Vitalik is suffering from is the technical debt. Like any kind of, you guys know technology really well. Every time you give birth to something, you modify it, you update it, you upgrade it, you add features, you add functions. And then it just becomes a big, ugly beast. That's why it's amazing that Ethereum has stood the test of time. And it shows you how intelligent and aware. I must give a shout out to Vitalik. He is very open and honest and direct, even if it means hurting his own kind of position or protocol. But that is just a huge issue for any technology. And that's why I think if you have a protocol that was designed 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's probably not going to make it because it has so much legacy debt and it's very difficult to change. Just like I don't know if they use this analogy for Ethereum, but to update Ethereum is like changing the wings on the plane while it's in flight. It's extremely difficult to do. And I think he's feeling that pain right now, especially as he sees the speed of other chains coming down the pike as well.
I think the reason he wrote it, I think, if you look at the context of what happened in ETH, we have projects like, for example, EigenLayer, where they basically extend the feature set of the Ethereum protocol by, for example, allowing you to have oracles as part of the native protocol, where you can stake ETH in EigenLayer, and this EigenLayer node, it will do the ETH consensus plus an additional thing, for example, be an oracle. So I think that's what he's referring to here, where, you know, ETH could have oracles built into the actual protocol, and it can have all of these other things that EigenLayer in particular wants to bring to ETH, and that's how I interpret it, because there are things happening to ETH now which are quite fundamental, such as, for example, what EigenLayer is doing with both pros and cons. We discussed a few months back, I remember. where very soon you can take your ETH, you can stake it not directly on an ETH node, but on an eigenlayer node, and then eigenlayer extends the ETH protocol with all kinds of things. And that is, I think, what he refers to decentralization risk, because eigenlayer could centralize the ETH staking, because now you can get a bit more rewards and we extend the protocol. And then you have different alternatives, L1s, and that's probably also part of it. But yeah, that's how I see it in this context of eigenlayer that is happening.
And I think breaking it down too, there's 4 things that really matter for a chain. And the simpler it is, the less complexity, the less exposure to, for example, security risks. Simpler protocols are easier to audit and secure. Also reliable. If it's simpler, it's less likely to break or have a bug. And usability as well. The easier it is to kind of build on, maybe the easier it is to use. And composability too is huge. And I think a lot of chains suffer because they don't have that level of composability. So I think he's going back to basics. And this could be inspired by a chart that is like the Elon Musk process of how you start with the process and then you simplify the process, and then you remove steps from the process, etc. The best process is no process. And I think everybody now in the world realizes it is very, very important to simplify everything that you do in life.
And I think this is absolutely a key. And the decisions they take here is what's going to win or lose which protocol dominates in the long run, I think, because it is, like you said, it's possible to take 2 paths. Either you build in all because you can do anything, you can program anything. There's open source, there's thousands of people who can contribute here. You can build anything almost. So you can build in all these things that are good to improve decentralization and improve the staking. You can build all those things, or you decide not to do it, and that they will be built by other people as more other protocols on top, or other companies even. And that's really the distinction to take. And if we just take 1 minute to see what he looks at, desire to enshrine as little as possible is understandably good. It hails from the Unix philosophy tradition of creating software that is minimalist and can easily be adapted to different needs by its users, avoiding the curses of software bloat. And this is probably the philosophy that I subscribe to. And then he said, however, blockchains are not personal computing operating systems. They are social systems. That means that there are rationales for enshrining certain features in the protocol that go beyond the rationales that exist in a purely personal computing context. So it is really pros and cons, and I think that he's really illustrating that. And then exactly how to do it and so on. It wasn't completely clear to me what is actually arguing for or against. I think it's mainly want to maybe showcase the pros and cons here. And but I think that is really what will determine the different paths here. And we will see how it goes. We are running severely over time.
Oh my goodness. Time flies when you have fun.
I realize we have talked about we have some questions. Dave asking, when do you feel the BTC supply shock will happen? Will it happen before or after ETF is granted? I
have a chart for that. Yeah, let me just pull it up. Just one very quick one. This is it kind of illustrates the supply shock, hopefully. This is the long-term holders and how they increase. It is at an all-time high and it keeps increasing. These are people that have held Bitcoin for over 155 days and it keeps breaking new highs. These folks are not letting go. No matter what happened, they held through the bear and they're still holding. And I think just over the past 20 days or so, 760,000 Bitcoin were added to the long-term holder supply, 15 million in total now, over 76% of the total supply. This is the real issue. This is the supply crunch. Now, if a big player jumps in, like spot ETF is approved and BlackRock tell pension funds to allocate 1% towards Bitcoin, that's it. There's no more supply unless price goes crazy. And then people say, oh, and people do take profits. I see people, they were taking profits when Solana hit $22 over the weekend. It's like, yes, $22. I made $2, $4. But you got to zoom out and you got to play where the puck is going to be. And the price action will be a lot higher than $22. Or $50,000 for Bitcoin. So people need to hold out for the right time to exit. And this supply crunch is looking very real. And it depends really. When the spot ETF happens, we're going to see a crazy supply crunch happen. If they do that, any type of allocation, we're talking 0.5% to 1%, it'll deplete the amount available for sale. Unless, of course, the long-term holders decide to dump their bags.
I guess it's kind of when FTX gonna dump Sol. So I think that some people are worried about these kind of events. Do we have?
I made a video about that. It's nothing burger. A lot of it is held. It's locked up. They cannot dump it. The amount of supply, the maximum supply that can hit the market in any given day is like, or any given week is 0.6% of supply, and that's only going to happen in 2025. So ignore that FUD. It's not going to affect the price until maybe 2025, March 2025. But until then, we're going to be fine.
Next, here is one. We can give this one to Ivan. Which cryptos will survive in the long term? BTC, ETH, definitely among the few. Not sure about others yet, though. What do you think, Ivan?
I think what we have to address here is when people ask, so I see it sometimes on my channel, people ask, hey, do you think this coin from the last bull market will come back? Do you think this will come back or that will come back? And then if we zoom out and we see how many coins actually had several successful bull and bear markets, and then they came back for another bull market and did an all-time high, it's very few. It's like Cardano, obviously Bitcoin. XRP did not really do all-time high now, the last one, and there's maybe a few more, but it's probably less than 10 guys out of thousands. So that's why, yes, we have a few big ones like Bitcoin, ETH, maybe Solana, Matic now as well. Let's see how they perform. But most of the other ones are very high risk. So whenever I speak about alts and the smaller caps, I'm mainly interested in the new ones that will be created. What is the new Solana? What is the new exciting kid on the block? Because there's going definitely to be a lot of them. And I would rather be in new coins without bag holders, without like a bunch of unlocks that already happened, than holding some kind of old coin from the last bull market, some kind of small altcoin. Also, the problem is if an altcoin dumps, let's say 98%, the problem is that if someone buys, they can buy a lot of it. And then if it does a 10x, I mean, for you, you're still down 90%, but they already did a 10x. So they're gonna dump the price before you even can get like 20% of your investment back. So that's a big problem with small, low liquidity altcoins that are down like hell. To me, it's better to focus the opportunity, and most probably it's a big opportunity cost, on new coins. But then, yeah, some of them, the big ones, will probably do well. I see James saying only 2% of crypto. Exactly, only 2%. Exactly, something like that.
Yeah, and only, in fact, I analyzed all the stock performance over the last 100 years. There's a couple of interesting and results came from that analysis. 56% of stocks will lose you money. Over half, which is staggering, and only 0.0008% or 0.0008 of stocks. If you look at the history of the total amount of stocks over the last 100 years, it's about 6,500 names. Only 20 of them matter. 20 of them will be life-changing for making money. Now, if you take that and apply that to crypto, of course, crypto is far, far riskier than stocks that are regulated and everything else. It's going to be a lot less. So I say, like, literally go into crypto with the mindset over the next, say, 3 to 5 years, there will be 20 names that will make good money, life-changing money, good multiples, not 23,000. So when people hold crypto number 2746 and I say they're pegging their dreams on it because it costs a fraction of 1 cent, you're probably wasting your money. And that's the reality that people need to really understand. And crypto is not different to traditional markets.
I agree. I mean, like you both said here.
Yeah.
I mean, Ivan, you and I, we both come to the conclusion you need some help probably to kind of try to find these new projects early, because there's simply too many and there's too much noise, so you can't really sift it through manually. And also the odds are exactly like James said here. So if you only take one bet, then you're like I don't know what's the English word for fakir, the guy who's like laying on nails. like in India, like the
Oh, yeah.
yoga, laying on the bed of nails. And the reason they can do it is that it's many nails, so each one doesn't actually poke you through. And it's like the joke, if you're a beginner person who exercise, you start with one nail. No, you don't start with one nail. So if you take one bet in crypto and you hold on to that only, you start very early and you find something that has a lot of things going for it, you're probably not going to make it, because the chances that you get it right is pretty low, even if you get all the fundamentals right. Okay, but maybe something else happened that was outside your control. They couldn't get the community going, or the lead programmer got married and decided to move to Bahamas and live on the beach, or someone got sick, or something didn't work out. There's a million and billion things that can go wrong, and usually something goes wrong. So you're probably not going to make it. But if you spread out those bets and you take many small bets, because of the craziness of the crypto market, the odds that you get it right is much higher, because the one that you actually got right, that one goes up 100x or 200x or 300x or 1000x. So you can be wrong pretty many times. But if you get it right once in a while, that still kind of works out well in average. And that's why we're here. That's why it's so exciting. Any final question or words? I think we don't have time to talk about the stock market also, Jay. We have to save it for the next one. Stop looking at USD pairs. That's actually a good comment. It's often helpful to look at the altcoin versus BTC pair instead, because then you kind of single out how the project is doing, not only if Bitcoin is going up or down versus USD price. That's a good comment. What else? Does Matic have a future, or should I have dumped at $2?
Oh, dear.
Don't know.
Yeah, I know you had Sandeep on your channel, Ivan, a while ago, but I saw him on Rand's channel, and I lost all faith in Matic after seeing that interview. He was all over the place. He didn't know which way was up.
What happened?
He just seems,
okay.
he just seems so confused. I created a whole mind map about everything that he said that made no sense whatsoever. I'll share it with you guys afterwards, but it's like, whoa, a very, very important thing. When you are an investor, you got to look at kind of the leadership team and who is driving the bus. If they are in any way scattered or irrational, or if they are a sociopath or a pathological liar or whatever, bail. that's been my rule book for over 30 years. And that's why it's so important. You got to look at many factors with any crypto or asset. You look at who's driving the bus. What is the team? And how good are they? And what is their end goal? That is absolutely critical to look at, as well as many other factors too.
Just to add the perspective of the TA, it's kind of hanging on to a thread here. And I think you don't need to know much about TA to understand where this is going. It's still sort of holding the support. But if it drops this one, this is Matic to BTC. If this fails here, you can probably guess where this is going. And it's, this is where HODL, I don't think is a good idea in altcoins, because if this drops, it can go all the way down just as it went all the way up here. And that's 4. Then that's like a very little left. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe they, find something and it finds support and goes back up there again. But that's the technicals for Matic. What else? Take one final comment. A lot of people asking about different coins. It's hard to cover. I bought ETH back in 2018 for 145. I mean, that's why we kind of love this market. That the moves are crazy. Even it feels like it's been down a long time and so on. That's up a lot since Ellen bought it. Congratulations, Ellen. It's going to pump again in April. I don't think we know exactly when things are going to pump. At least I don't know. So that's my take on that. Any final words, guys?
It's been an incredible start.
It's been good. Yeah, another week in the books, another DCA. Good chatting with you guys. I feel that all the topics we had were all encompassing with the alts, big fat protocol or extendable protocol, the macro. We had everything here. So thanks a lot, guys.
I think my big takeaway is that if you've been asleep for the past 6 months, now is the time to wake up, because things could start happening here, actually. We don't know the bigger picture. We have a small bottom pattern in Bitcoin. We're getting bottom pattern in many altcoins that made big moves already over the weekend. If this moves now and breaks out, it could happen fast. So don't come back at the top of the next cycle. Be ready, keep studying, and be ready when things move. James, any final thoughts?
All good in the hood. It'll be very
Which
interesting.
channel?
The next 12 to 18 months will be very exciting. And just stay healthy, everybody, and be in the right positions.
Don't forget to subscribe to James and Ivan while you are obviously already. Which channel is it next time?
It's mine.
James? So see you on Monday on James's channel.
Awesome, gents. Have
See
a
you
great
guys.
week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.